Hi, and welcome to the latest Redmond reviews. I'm Chris Garlock, managing editor of the American Go E-Journal, and I'm joined by Michael Redmond, 9-Dan professional. Michael, thanks for being with us.
Happy to be with you.
So today we're going to take a look at another master game. This is one of a series of 60 games played recently, and Michael, along with many players across the world, have been studying these very carefully and starting to apply them and learn lessons. So we're going to take about a 30-minute look at this game. Michael, why don't you introduce the player that Master's playing, and then tell us some of the highlights of this game, why you chose this one.
Well, the white player is Park Junghwan, and I would call him the strongest player in Korea. Mm-hmm. I don't think, for most players, maybe Lee Sedol is more famous, but actually Park Junghwan is doing better recent years. And I would call him maybe number 2 in the world rankings, mm-hmm. Because he seems to lose out to KJ, but otherwise he's a very strong player. And okay. In this game, Master is doing something a bit unusual for the whole 60-game series, because Master is playing a big Moyo strategy and really sort of committing itself to the Moyo. Like, usually Master just plays, when it plays oriented towards the center, it doesn't really go to surround territory early in the game. Like, it usually takes a balance of territory, not only making a big structure, but allowing the opponent to come in and then invading the opponent's territory or the opponent's Moyo, mm-hmm. to make a kind of a balance there. And that's the usual style that I'm sort of seeing in Master's games. Whereas in this game, Master is going out something that looks a bit more like Takemiya, a big Moyo strategy, although it is the Chinese opening.
Excellent. All right, before we jump into the game, just a reminder, this game is, the SGF file is on our website, usgo.org. We recommend that you be following along on your SGF file, and that's because Michael has put a lot more variations in the SGF file than he's going to have time to go into in this commentary. So lots more for you to look at. With that said, let's jump right into it.
Yeah, I do tend to put a lot of variations into the SGF file, so for people who like that, it's really worth it. Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to start now. This is different from usual again in that in the 60 games we saw this over the New Year's, Master did not play the Chinese opening very much. Like usually Master with black was playing a star point and a komoku, a 3-4 point in the mm-hmm. other direction. And then it would play one of its big shimaris, a big corner enclosure. Mm-hmm. When we were calling Master AlphaGo, and I think actually the Google people are still calling it AlphaGo, but most pros are now calling it Master. But when it was playing against Lee Sedol in the 5-game match, this was its favorite opening. Like, this is what it did with black. Mm-hmm. And it was very simple in that it would play the same opening every time. It would play the Chinese opening, or some variation of that. And then when it had white, it would play 2 star points. So this is sort of remembering what it used to do, playing the old style. And white jumps into the 3-3 point. This is already actually an opening that AlphaGo started. Like, it was an opening that we see something very similar in the AlphaGo versus AlphaGo games that DeepMind mm-hmm. published after the Lee Sedol match, and they were played about the same time as AlphaGo played against Lee Sedol. Mm-hmm. And in these 3 games, it was playing an opening quite similar to this. And after that, actually, this opening became popular in professional play. So this was one of the first openings that AlphaGo started on us, and professionals are emulated. And now I sort of passed by it. This is a point where usually black has 2 choices. Like, has a choice of which side to cover. And like if black covers on this side, this is a peaceful variation in which black gets the right side. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, if black covers on this side, this is actually something that has been very popular in professional Go. basically until Master showed up, when people started copying what Master just did. But something like, well, if black plays here, now white has to add a stone to the corner to make life. So white plays here. There's a cut there, so black will probably play some kind of a connection. There's a number of ways black can do it, but I'll just have the simple one. And then white will play something on the upper side. This gives white some extra territory in the corner, and of course white has played the upper side. So white's very fast-paced, and black is thick. How people judge this, actually, it depends on the professional player. Even among professionals, there's some difference there. I think a large number of players think that the speed of white's play is good. So I think a lot of players will sort of prefer white a little bit. There's one other variation of this that would be black playing the hane here, which puts more pressure on white on the upper side. But actually, black cannot kill the corner yet. So black would be adding another stone. And because of the potential forcing move at this point, it's pretty difficult for black to outright kill the corner. Actually, there's a lot of, I could go into a lot of variations here, but this is probably being done a lot already, so I'll leave it there. But the fact that the corner is not completely dead, it gives white a chance to play probably on the lower side, play somewhere else on the board, and have a very, very quickly paced opening for white. And so this is what has been happening to pros. And that's what has made this invasion to the 3-3 point so popular, because it does give white a lot of speed in the beginning of the game. But Master ignores it. Now, this is a very typical way of, you might say, thinking of the game, although I know that Master doesn't go through the same logical process that humans do. The way that Master plays away, it's giving itself more flexibility. Which is a very kind of a key word when we're talking about Master. Black has the option of playing at A or B later, and that can change depending on how white plays. Like if black needs to make a solid life, black would choose B. But if black wants to build on the left side of towards the left side of the board, black might choose A instead. And so as the middle game fighting, of course, the direction black wants to play will probably change depending on how the middle game develops. Sure. And so it's a very flexible way of playing. The drawback is that professionals haven't liked up till now, is the fact that white can play here and just take away the whole corner. This gives white a big corner. It's almost as if white had played in this corner first. So corners. And so black's taking a huge loss in territory. And so most professionals have, up till now, most professionals have not liked this because black has to sort of catch up in territory afterwards. But now that Master has played it, we're seeing it in professional games too. And actually, I have the feeling that this moyo is so well formed, actually, that this move here, I'm going to mark this move. This move here, this stone here now is sort of in the ideal point. It works well with the jump that black has just played, and black has a very nicely formed moyo, which means that black's overall position, all the stones are working well together. And so we're seeing professionals trying this out and actually playing this now, more willing to play away when white plays this. So that's one difference that we almost immediately saw in Master, because of Master. The professionals are changing that and just experimenting it for the time being. But I'm pretty sure that this change is probably going to last because it makes sense. It's so strange how there's some things that you have to be shown to realize, even if you're a pro.
And then it becomes obvious.
Yeah. Now black has really expanded the moyo. We can see that black seems to have a pretty big stake in making something out of this moyo. All of black's moves are oriented to this. And so that's why I'm saying this is an unusual game for Master, because usually Master doesn't really stake so much in one part of the board. So this is unusual. And it's at this point where white played here, and probably because I've seen what happened after this, I sort of have a problem with this move. So I've tried to find something better for white. And I think white should have jumped into the right side. My reasoning here is that, well, the lower side really, there's less space on it.
Right.
And so when white goes in, white's going to be pretty cramped. And being a very strong fighter, that probably doesn't bother Park. He's a very strong fighting player. And obviously he knows how to make a life there, but just the fact that there's more room on the right side makes it look easier for me just to jump in here. And I think that, since white does have territory in 3 corners, probably, and so has some territory that white is already cast in on, white can probably afford to let the lower side become black's territory. And black, when white plays a shoulder hit like this, it's a kadatsuki, as we say in Japanese, black usually has a choice of pushing or crawling. Usually it's considered good to either push or crawl, play one direct move. So I'm going to show those variations. Pushing looks natural. We're just going to continue like this. And white has a nice white light shape. We can see that the lower side is sort of getting a bit smaller now. And of course, the right side, the upper part of the right side is going to be black's territory, but white has the slide at A. So it's okay for white to allow black to be surrounding that area, because it's really a weak territory when white can slide in on the side like that.
And it's kind of flattening that black area on the bottom in a natural way.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So maybe black wants to crawl, in which case white's going to jump. And this is a much more complicated fight. And I could go into a lot of variations now.
I think you have that in the game, because we want to get to the fight a little bit later.
Well, actually, I'm leaving it in the variations too, because this is it's going to be confusing to most people. Right. And I think at this point, one should have the feeling that white's going to be okay here. The white has sabaki. Right. There's just there's enough room in the corner.
So what happens? Yeah, what happens when white plays is in the game? It seems.
Well, this would be really great if black would answer on the third line. But you're not going to see any pro doing that, right. And obviously you're not going to see master do it either. So master plays on the top here. Now this is basically why I brought up Takemiya's name, because this is the point where AlphaGo master starts looking like Takemiya. Mm-hmm. It's a very Takemiya-like strategy. There's something about Takemiya's games that I like to talk about, is the way his walls don't have eyes. Mm-hmm. And he makes very efficient walls that don't necessarily have eye shape. Mm-hmm. But as the game progresses, Takemiya is very good at connecting that wall to the overall position of his stone. So this move I'm just showing right now, the final black move, loosely connects black's wall on the left to black's moyo on the right. And it means that white will not have a good opportunity to try to attack that wall. And so this style of playing with a wall that doesn't really have eyes, and handling that by just going around on top of white and saying, going ahead, make a life. It's okay for white to live. Black can allow that. So this is a very Takemiya-like way. It's very important, because people who like to emulate Takemiya, especially if they're amateur players, it's very easy to make the wall, because Takemiya tends to do it in a very simple way. But people make the mistake in that they let that wall become isolated, which is something that Takemiya never does. And it's the reason his walls work, because this wall on the left side of the board here has potential of losing his eye space. It doesn't really have any eyes at this point. So it's very important for black to be, while surrounding white, it's very important to be connecting that wall up. And in order to do that, black is sort of forfeiting the idea of trying to kill white, which is something that pros don't really try to do very much anyway.
Right.
So just to continue with the game, it's pretty obvious that white's going to make a life here. Mm-hmm. I'll just show that one. I really want to show this variation. Yeah, if white plays here, it'll be easy. This way. But you can see that black has a very solid wall here in the lower side, and that solid wall makes it very difficult for white to jump into the lower part of the right side. So it means that black has something like 40 points there, which are going to be pretty difficult for white to reduce. And that means that black has enough territory to counteract white's territory throughout the board. And of course, the upper part, the upper part of the right side and the center area is not 100% territory yet, but it's going to be tough for white to jump in there anyway. And it's just sort of extra points that black doesn't really need yet. Like just the lower part of the right side is enough to catch up in territory. So this would be too easy for black. So what white does is this is a very sharp move, a strong move. And white's looking for something quite similar to what I was just showing you. But in this variation, there's a weakness in black's wall. Like white can play at A later and have the cut at B. This means that white will be able to make something on the right side later. So black really needs one more move, maybe at A, to consolidate the right side. And that would make a one move difference. So this would be okay for white, actually. But it's at this point that Master starts playing very, very strongly. This is just going to be a showdown here.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way this is going to end peacefully, except that Master ends up allowing white to live. But usually you'd expect to see blood in this variation.
But we're going to talk about that. I have a question about that, but go ahead.
Okay, so white has to extend. This is a forced sequence. Also, white has to push against here to save those two stones in Sente. And we can see that black's group on the lower side is isolated. White has two sort of dead-looking groups on either side. So normally one would just want to concentrate on the semi here, the fight to capture. So I'll go into that. Normally white would just want to play here to kill the lower side black group. Black will fill an outside dame. And if white fills from the outside, like it looks like black's going to have 4 liberties and white has only 3. So white has to, it's a good move for white to play here. If white can, let's just add a variation here. If black is going to answer that, it looks like black wants to make an eye here. Now we can see that next move, white's going to be able to put black in a target. So this is good for white. So actually it's good for black to cover from the outside. And this leads to a ko. But as we see, black's the player who has the ko threats. And well, when this ko ends, we have something like a solid steel wall there surrounding black's territory. Like this is so thick that there's no way white's going to jump into the right side. And white hasn't really gotten anything in return. Like white saved his lower side group, but black can still make a life in the lower left corner. And the right side territory is just too big. I'm calling it a territory now because black has so much thickness. There's no way white's going to get into it. So this is just...
Well, there's two things. One is that whole right side for black is basically virtually territory, but you're saying that white has gotten away in the middle there, but black can actually still live on that side or in that corner, so that's not even white territory in the left-hand side.
It's not even white. Yeah, black could jump into the 3-3 point and make it or something. Yeah.
Okay, just a time check for you. We've got about 12 minutes. So
12 minutes left.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I better go on to the key part of the game. So just going after the black group like this is not working. So white cuts in the center. And white's hope here is to have black answer this somehow. Like this would be the shape move. The center of 3 stones is the vital point. Now white could continue with this ko. And having that cut in the center makes a whole world of difference because now it's white who has a ko threat at A. Black doesn't really have any good ko threats. So white would be able to win this ko. And that would probably make some difference to how much of the right side black can hope to get. Like there would be some bad aji now. With that cut in a pretty prominent point in the center, white should have some potential on the right side of the board. So winning this ko would make a big difference for white. But black's not going to let that happen. This ugly-looking move is actually very effective because now black is winning the semi. And so white's 3 stones there are dead. And I put a whole bunch of variations in there for the semi, but I'm not going to go into them.
Lots of stuff.
They are in the SGF file for people who want to know what happens if white does stuff like this. But I'm just going to leave that for people to look up because this SGF file, when I do these commentaries, the SGF file is very important in that it has more detail. And so at this point, white's sort of committed to... white might be able to live on the lower side now, but the right side is looking better and better for black. So white's sort of committed, once white plays here, white's sort of committed to try to make a life on the right side, or try to make sabaki on the right side of the board. So this is what white's trying to do here. White's trying to make a life on the right side. And black wins. Now black has won the semai here. The lower side white group that's about 10 stones. It's starting to look almost dead, right?
Yeah.
White still has to play on the right side though, because after playing all these moves, it would be really bad for those stones to die. So it's pretty desperate sort of for white at this point.
Okay.
But it's interesting that Master doesn't go for the kill.
Because it's a one move kill for black against that center group, right? I mean, yeah, doesn't that just that's pretty much it.
Yeah, as a pro, even I would be sort of tempted just to take these stones. It looks like such a big territory.
Yeah.
Like it's 30 points just counting the captured stones. And then so 40, 50, 60, it's at least 60 points for black. And it's the reading involved is so easy, basically. There's no way that white's going to make a life now.
Right.
And so this would be probably a big win for black. White might play something like this on the right side. Of course, Master and when it was AlphaGo before also, it just doesn't really seem to care how big the win is.
Right.
Or what the margin of the game is. And it has its own ideas about what a safe win is, which most human professionals don't really agree with, but it feels sometimes it does strange things that don't really seem to make sense to us, but it seems to feel that they're safer. And in this case, I can try to attempt to explain what's going on. Is that when this kind of thing happens, black does have an unsettled group in the upper right.
Sure.
So it means black's going to have to run away with that. And so in a way, the game after this, white will have control. White will be controlling how the game proceeds, and will be sort of hoping to set up a cut here in the center, maybe. And actually, I would say that maybe Master thinks that this is actually more dangerous. Even though if black plays properly, black's probably going to have a bigger win. I would say that maybe Master doesn't really see a clear road to victory. Even though if black plays correctly, I think black would win by more. Maybe Master thinks it's just safer since Master already knows that it's winning. Now this is the difference. Like I have to study the game a bit to really figure out that black's winning. Black's doing well. I get the feeling black's doing well because black won the fight here. But can black afford to allow white to live on the lower side? I would have to think about that.
Right.
But Master apparently knows that it's a hidden territory when it just plays very safely like this. It's hard to tell who's the player who's attacking really, because black's just answering white. And at this point, I've added 2 markers on the board. There's an A and a B, just showing 2 good moves for white. Like if white plays at A, white sort of has an eye there in the center and is running out into the center. So if white plays A, white should be okay. Also, we'll see later in the game maybe that white can play at B and make a life on the right side. So white has one of these 2 plays that should be able to allow white to make a life. So at this point, white's right side group is sort of hanging on to life, basically because black was so submissive in allowing white to play all those forcing moves. White's managed to live with Sente. So this was locally it was a success for white, and now white plays on the lower side. This lower side white group is not really alive yet. And again, this is another point where Master sort of surprised me, just playing this move.
Right.
Like all black has to do is play an Atari here, and if white connects, it's going to die. So like this would be just a dead group. So white would have to play a Ko, and white does have a Ko threat here, for instance. But black could just could play something like this and just kill the white group here.
Wow.
So it's not as if black doesn't have Ko threats. And on the left side here, black can still save the trash white's corner with this move.
Right.
So it's not as if black's losing very much. And so this looks like a great chance for Black to finish off the game by playing strongly. But Master doesn't do that. Like Master just allows White to live. It's so easy. So we can see that Master is just playing very simply here, avoiding any complications, and it turns out that Black's already ahead.
Yeah, and we'll kind of stop here because it's actually a really good game record to look at, because I think what your comment is that it's a really sort of classic endgame, but Master's already got control of the game. And you talked about this before, in that once Masters feels like it's got the win, it just is going to avoid complications and play really simply. This is a really good example of that. Lets White live on both sides. Sente is just too valuable to Master to bother killing anything, right?
Yeah, well, I just like to say that its positional judgment is so great. That it can call the victory at this point. And remember, it's probably a 30-second per move game.
Right.
And so it's just a human, even a top pro player, I think, would not be sufficiently sure of the win to be able to play very simple moves like this at this point. We're only something like 80 moves into the game. I did put some markers there, so I'll talk about A and B. Those are just 2 points that Black can play next from the Kakari. So it's making Niai. And the end game after this is really, they're just playing the biggest move. It's relatively simple, a very beautiful end game. So you can look at the end game and see that the players are playing the biggest move on the board every time.
Right.
And in a logical process, they finish the big end game moves, and it turns out that Black's more than 10 points ahead on the board. So actually, we can see that from that Black already has a fairly sizable lead. But the speed with which Master can decide that it's winning is really special. And the way it can finish the game, it's very good at the end game, which is sort of... the fact that it loses a lot of points at the end is sort of misleading, because when it gets to the small Yosei, it usually loses something like 4 or 5 points.
But it can afford to, though.
Only when it can afford them, and it's usually something like 5.5 points ahead. In this game, the end game ended with Master winning by 5.5 points, I think. But it had a few more points actually.
Right.
So it loses points in the final points of the end game, but it's very, very good at simplifying the game from this point onwards to the end game. So that part of the game, it's playing very skillfully, showing that it actually is very good at the end game.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of Redmond Reviews. Michael, thank you so much for it's a great game, and for really bringing some clarity to a pretty exciting couple of sequences there. Of course, be sure to check out the SGF file. Lots of variations there, and we will see you next time. Thanks again, Michael. Really appreciate it.
I had a lot of fun. Thank you.
All right. Take care.